Tonight on Currents News, the leader of the right arm of the Catholic Church could be America's next saint.
An incredibly important moment here in Hartford, Connecticut, as Knights of Columbus founder Blessed Michael McGivney was beatified. I'm Emily Drooby, and that is ahead.
COVID tests, lots of them. New York's red zone schools given a green light. They can reopen if they can meet new testing requirements. And the final countdown.
Hello, Wisconsin. We're back. We're back. We're going to win.
What's up, Rio Grande?
Contenders campaigning across the country. Rallies in some unlikely places have many wondering just which way states will swing. Plus, the first masses held in Nice. In the same church, 3 Catholics prayed right before being murdered. The news starts right now.
We just were praying to have our son with us and not die, and it's turned into all of this.
2 lives coming together, this little boy and a soon-to-be saint. Father Michael McGivney's miracle, alive and well on the day the American priest becomes blessed. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. Doctors said their baby had no chance of surviving, so the Shackle family prayed to the founder of the Knights of Columbus for a miracle. This weekend, their 5-year-old walked down the aisle of a Connecticut cathedral. Father Michael McGivney had given him life, but little Mikey propelled the priest to sainthood. Currents News' Emily Drooby has the story from Hartford.
A walk his parents never thought he'd take if it wasn't for his namesake, Father Michael McGivney, the priest who saved Mikey's life. Doctors said Michael Shackle wouldn't make it. While in the womb, he was diagnosed with a fatal condition, but on Saturday, he helped lead the celebration of now blessed Father Michael McGivney. He's the miracle that made this moment possible.
He's our own little relic, you know, that we carry, reminds us of God every time we look at him and the power that God has exhibited.
Daniel is a longtime member of the Knights of Columbus, which was founded by McGivney. So when they found out Mikey was fatally sick, he and his wife Michelle prayed for Father McGivney's intercession, asking him to save their unborn son. After a trip to Fatima, the Shackles discovered Michael's condition was miraculously gone.
I see the face of God when I look at Mikey. I know Father McGivney chose him because he is such an inspiration to all. He's such a joy.
In May, Pope Francis recognized their son's miracle, clearing the way for Father McGivney's beatification, a step closer to becoming a saint. McGivney started the Knights in 1882 while he was a parish priest in New Haven. It was created to help widows and orphans like retired auxiliary bishop Peter Rosaza's family. His grandfather died young.
Leaving my grandmother with 6 children in 1916. And thanks be to God and Father McGivney, Grandma got a check from the insurance that tided her over for several years.
Almost 140 years later, and it's grown to over 2 million members.
There are millions of people that look to Father McGivney and frankly have been praying through him for his intercessions.
Blessed McGivney's cause for sainthood began in Hartford in 1997, and now 23 years later, a portrait of the priest was unveiled. This milestone in the McGivney cause, an inspiration to Catholics and to the Knights.
What the church is saying is your founder led a holy life.
Now that Father McGivney has been declared blessed, he's only one step away from being canonized as a saint. He'll need one more verified miracle before that can happen. In Hartford, Connecticut, Emily Drooby, Currents News.
The American priest also caught the Pope's attention this weekend. Francis mentioned Father McGivney's long-awaited milestone on All Saints' Day.
Il suo esempio stimoli tutti noi a testimoniare sempre più il Vangelo della carità. Un applauso al nuovo beato.
Something about Father McGivney that many do not know. He may be connected to the current COVID crisis. The American cleric died from pneumonia in 1890, but scientists studying that year believe it could have been an early coronavirus pandemic. Schools in New York's red zones, given the green light, they can open their doors again. That is, if they can meet the governor's new testing guidelines. Schools have to screen both teachers and students before they can get back into the classroom. And after that, they have to conduct weekly screenings of 25% of the students. If they have 9 or more positive cases, the schools will have to close and go back to remote learning. The governor's new hotspot guidelines include 5 Catholic academies in the Diocese of Brooklyn and 1 high school that have been closed for a month. Educators in hot zones are eager to open up, but they're worried about the additional costs of increased testing.
Many of us are already functioning at a deficit budget this year because of all the provisions we needed to put in place. So we're very, very cautious about how that's going to impact us in the long run.
Catholic schools in the diocese are currently working on meeting the governor's benchmarks, but they have not yet announced when they will be able to begin in-person learning. It's a battleground blitz. Millions of Americans have already cast their ballots, but that hasn't stopped the 2 candidates from fighting for every last vote, especially in those key states where the race is tightening. President Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden are in an all-out sprint to the finish line in the final hours of a contentious battle for the White House.
We are going to win 4 more years in that very beautiful place called the White House.
We need every single one of you to get out and vote on Tuesday.
Both candidates focusing heavily on Pennsylvania on Monday. Biden in the Pittsburgh area after an early morning stop in Ohio. The president in Scranton with planned stops in North Carolina, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Over the weekend, President Trump blitzing the key battleground states of Michigan, Iowa, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida.
What a crowd. Hello, Florida. Hello, Florida.
While Joe Biden and his surrogates targeted North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania is critical in this election.
Large crowds have been gathering for rallies in critical swing states all over the country, but there's also been some unlikely support, like a rally for President Trump in Beverly Hills, a bastion of liberal politics in a mostly blue state. But the divisive campaign has tensions running high, putting law enforcement on alert and forcing many businesses to take precautions as Election Day approaches. Some Trump supporters even holding up traffic on the Garden State Parkway and the Mario Cuomo Bridge. And in Texas on Sunday, a convoy of vehicles waving Trump flags surrounded a Biden campaign bus, prompting the cancellation of 2 events and this response from Joe Biden.
We've never had anything like this.
The FBI is investigating that incident, the president tweeting, "These patriots did nothing wrong. Instead, the FBI and justice should be investigating the terrorists, anarchists, and agitators of Antifa." As the nation grapples with ongoing civil unrest and concerns over COVID surges spill over into presidential politics, the candidates now making their final pitches to the American people.
With your vote, we will continue to cut your taxes, cut regulations, support our great police.
We need American leadership that seeks to de-escalate tensions, to open the lines of communication, to bring us together, to heal, to hope.
The president will finally return to the White House at 1:30 Tuesday morning. He will come home to an extra layer of protection. A non-scalable fence is going up around the entire perimeter of the White House. Police in D.C. and around the country are getting ready for possible protests. Businesses near the White House have already boarded up doors and windows. 95 million and counting. That's the number of ballots already in. Americans are shattering early voting records. Election workers are hoping that huge number makes for a smooth day at the polls tomorrow. Some states are even surpassing the total number of votes cast in the 2016 election. This year could see the highest voter turnout since 1908. They voted Democratic in 2016, pledging never Trump. But 4 years later, there are people out there who are now boarding the Trump train. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has the about-face story of some faithful Catholics. Jessica.
Christine, there's a lot of power that comes with changing your mind. And in this election, with pro-life issues at the forefront, those voting with a Catholic conscience could have more power than ever before. Voters on both sides of the aisle say they're letting their faith lead the way, but they're not all going in the same direction.
What's happening here is we have a non-Catholic who's actually upholding Catholic teaching and a Catholic who's undermining it.
Perhaps you agree, perhaps you don't, but Chad PECKNOLD, an associate professor of theology at the Catholic University of America, is making his voice heard.
I kind of got slotted into the never Trumper category.
He's a swing voter. As a pro-life Catholic, Chad said he couldn't and didn't vote for President Trump in 2016. But this election, he says he won't even consider another candidate.
It's my goal to defend the unborn. The president has absolutely delivered on that, not only at the Supreme Court level, but there's hundreds of judges that have been appointed. I simply did not believe he would deliver those, and he did.
And he's not the only one who thinks so. Brian Birch, the president of Catholic Vote, also changed his mind.
A courageous record of pro-life commitment. And I think all Catholics should look at that and say, you know, for those of us that were skeptical, we could not be happier to have been wrong.
The pro-life movement has become more energized by President Trump's record on pro-life issues. But many Catholics believe being pro-life doesn't mean just being against abortion.
I am a pro-life, pro-social justice, consistent ethnic Catholic, and neither party and neither candidate matches my values. In some ways, I'm politically homeless. But for me, I could not support President Trump.
John CARR, the director of the Initiative on Catholic Social Thought and Public Life at Georgetown University, is on the other end of the spectrum.
Among the major issues for me are protecting the unborn and the equality of all God's children, and fanning the flames of racism, demonizing immigrants. It's just been too much for me. And so I can't support President Trump.
In recent decades, the Catholic vote has been essentially split down the middle, but at the same time, Catholics represent a significant part of the population in battleground states like Texas, Florida, and Pennsylvania. It's counties in those states that can decide this election. Christine?
Thanks, Jess. New Yorkers, there's one more chance to vote, and that's tomorrow. Get out there. Polls are open from 6 in the morning to 9 at night. Now, if you don't know where your polling site is, go to findmypollsite.vote.nyc. There's a lot more news headed your way. Prayers for the victims of a terrorist attack in France in the very church where they were killed. Soldiers now protecting that church and others. What happens when they leave? A security expert fills us in on policing strategies. And later, worth the wait, why one New Yorker says she didn't mind waiting 2.5 hours to cast her ballot. Stay with us.
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
Mass in the same place. 3 people were killed in an Islamist extremist attack just days ago. Sunday services around France honored the victims who spent their last moments on earth praying here at the Notre Dame Basilica in Nice. Some parishioners gathered inside, but hundreds watched from outside as the Bishop of Nice purified the basilica and celebrated the lives of their friends. His message: give strength to our peacemakers. Police gave churches around the country the green light for masses despite France's new lockdown measures. Heavy security forces remain stationed outside as the world learns new information about what exactly happened on Thursday. 6 people so far have been questioned by police. The attacker is still in the hospital and hasn't been interviewed yet. French investigators are working with their counterparts in Italy and Tunisia to figure out how the young man got into Europe and how he disappeared after being refused asylum in Italy. This is just the latest in a string of church attacks in France. Here now to talk about the elevated terror threat there and church security in general is Joe Esposito, former NYPD Chief of Department and the former Commissioner of New York City Emergency Management. And Joe, France's national security level is at its highest level right now. What exactly does that mean in terms of policing? What is their force doing right now?
Well, all law enforcement agencies have levels of enforcement or alerts, and France, as you said, is at their highest. In New York, we were at our highest after 9/11. Right. We redid our alert status after that, but depending on the situation, departments will bring up their level of concern and coverage, and that's what's happening around the world right now.
Yes, so right now in France, they have soldiers protecting the churches, but what happens when the soldiers leave?
Well, that's it. You can't keep it up forever. But what you have to do is create an atmosphere where the terrorists are unsure of what they can accomplish. And that's what they do here in New York. We move the assets around day to day. We'll visit synagogues, mosques, churches, and not just houses of worship. We go to all the high-profile locations and then move them around. And it's an attempt to keep the terrorists off guard, to make them unsure of where the coverage is.
You know, it's funny because it always seems to people that it's a reactive thing, that it's not happening preventatively, but it is. Maybe just we don't know about it.
Well, I'm sure you've seen them. The NYPD will go out with teams of highway bomb-sniffing dogs, emergency service people, and they'll make stops at all different locations, random stops, to throw the terrorist off guard, so that the terrorist is unsure about what we're actually doing. But in New York, the NYPD is on this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They have a whole bureau that deals with counterterrorism.
So we're still learning more about this suspect in France and if he worked with anyone else. There were some arrests, but they're still investigating that. What can police do to stop terror cells from getting into a country?
Well, that's a national issue, and I think the current president is trying to do as much as he can with that. He's got some resistance as far as immigration is concerned. But again, I think you've got to look at the immigration system in this country, and it's got to be tightened up. We want the good people to come in, we want to keep the bad people out. And I think if they work hard on it and they work together on both sides of the aisle, I think they come up with a plan to really do a better job protecting us with what's coming into this country.
And if this suspect did work alone and was a lone wolf, is that even more difficult for the police?
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah. A lot of the arrests that the NYPD has made has been infiltrating cells and infiltrating people that are going to plan to do things. But if it's a lone wolf, and that lone wolf doesn't talk to anyone, does it himself, does it herself, all the preparation, all the building of whatever device they're going to, they do it alone. It's a very difficult scenario to prevent. And that's been the events that have happened in New York. Right. A lot of these folks are loners, and those are the most difficult ones to overcome.
That's scary. So after what happened in France, should New York City be putting extra protection at our churches? Do we need extra security measures?
Well, yes, we do, and they're doing it already.
Yeah.
I was at church yesterday. I passed by some mosques on Friday, some synagogues on Saturday. I live in the city, so I drove around. I visited a number of churches yesterday, and what I did see, and we suggested to the churches in Brooklyn and Queens, we put out a memo. The diocese put out a memo and gave them some suggestions to do, and for the most part, I saw that they really were listening to what the direction from the bishop was.
All right, Joe Esposito, former NYPD Chief of Department and former Commissioner of New York City Emergency Management. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you. Stay safe.
This All Souls Day different than the last, the Pope celebrating Mass with just a few people present and everyone but the Holy Father and the choir wearing masks. The Vatican has stepped up their COVID restrictions after a pilgrim who attended one of the Pope's general audiences tested positive. After Mass, the Pope then went to a Vatican cemetery to bless the tombs and pray for those who have departed. The Pope's prayers today may have helped this 3-year-old girl in Turkey. She was pulled from the rubble Monday after being stuck for more than 65 hours after a major earthquake. The magnitude 7.0 quake killed at least 39 people in Turkey and Greece, injured more than 800, and left thousands without a home. The Pope had also prayed for the area during his Sunday Angelus. Doctors say the little girl is being treated in intensive care, but does not have any serious injuries. Still to come on Currents News, she made it just in the nick of time. Why voting in this year's presidential election was so important for one woman in the Diocese of Brooklyn. When we come back. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. New Yorkers aren't known for their patience, but they are known for making their voices heard. So it's no surprise more than 1 million people in the Big Apple got out there and voted early. Currents News' Emily Drooby caught up with one of the Empire State's newest citizens. Simone Henry cast her vote for the very first time after waiting in line for 2.5 hours, but she says it was worth it.
The line to vote stretches 2 city avenues, but under her mask, Simone Henry is still smiling because this is the moment she's been working towards for years.
I'm almost there.
The brand new American citizen finally gets to cast her first vote.
I'm excited because I feel like it's very important, especially for this election.
Over 23 million U.S. immigrants will be able to vote in the 2020 election, about 10% of the national electorate. It's estimated that 3.1 million became naturalized after the 2016 election, making this the first presidential election they're eligible for. Simone is one of them. She came to the U.S. from Jamaica back in 2009 and got her green card in 2016.
From there, I know that I wanted to become a citizen.
The Christian woman relied on Catholic Migration Services' free help throughout the process. Her goal was to vote in the 2020 election to help her family.
I have 3 boys. We are colored, we are minority, we're in a community that, needs funding. The schools need funding.
So she cracked the books and studied hard for her April citizenship test and interview.
How many amendments does the Constitution have?
She was ready, but then the world shut down. Simone was terrified she wouldn't become a citizen in time.
I was very worried. Because I want to be a part of that group that have a voice, and especially for this election.
It's an issue many immigrants faced. Simone was one of the lucky ones. She got a new date in August and officially became a citizen on September 26th, just in the nick of time.
I feel like I'm going to be a part of a change, a part of, making a decision for my kids' future, for myself, in terms of immigration, in terms of jobs, benefits.
On Saturday, the first day of early voting, Simone exercised her right as an American. A 2.5-hour line, the last leg of her 11-year journey to the polls.
I did it.
Finally getting that I voted sticker, but having her voice heard was the real prize. In East New York, Emily Drooby, Currents News.
And just another reminder tonight, if you haven't made your voice heard yet, there's one more chance to vote. That's tomorrow. If you don't know where your polling site is, go to findmypollsite.vote.nyc. Polls are open from 6 in the morning to 9 at night. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Before we go, let's take another look again at Father Michael McGivney's long-awaited beatification. It is through his example that so many Knights of Columbus do God's work throughout the Diocese of Brooklyn and the world.